The cargo bay of Station Prime was loud and busy. Dozens of alien species walked through the wide metal halls, carrying boxes, pushing carts, and shouting orders in languages that sounded like growls and clicks and whistles. The air smelled like engine oil and strange spices from 100 different worlds. Danny Cole wiped sweat from his forehead and grabbed another heavy crate from the pile. He was 24 years old, with brown hair that was always messy and green eyes that his mother used to say looked like summer leaves. He stood 5 feet and 6 inches tall, which was average for a human but tiny compared to everyone else on the station. The crate was heavy, but Danny was stronger than he looked. He had been working as a cargo handler for 3 years now, ever since he left Earth on a transport ship looking for adventure among the stars. He had found plenty of adventure, but he had also found something else. He had found that the galaxy did not think much of humans. A group of merchants stood near the loading doors, watching Danny work. There were tall reptile creatures with thick green scales and yellow eyes. They stood about 7 feet tall on average, and their bodies were covered in hard plates that could stop a knife blade. The leader of the group was named, and he had a deep scar across his snout that he liked to show off. "Look at that," said to his friends, pointing one clawed finger at Danny. "The little Terran thinks he can do real work." The other laughed. Their laughter sounded like rocks being crushed together. "How do they survive?" another asked. "No scales, no claws, no venom glands. Their teeth are flat and useless. A child of our species could kill 10 of them." "Their world must be very soft," agreed. "No predators, no danger. They probably evolved from prey animals." Danny heard every word. The translator chip behind his ear made sure of that. It turned all alien languages into English so he could understand them, and it also turned his English into whatever language the listener needed to hear. He kept working. He did not he did not respond to their insults. He had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. The Starward Drift, the ship Danny worked on, was docked at Bay 17. It was a small freighter that carried cargo between stations and colonies. The captain was a human woman named Cross who had been flying ships since before Danny was born. The crew was small, just 6 people, and they had become like a family over the past 3 years. Bate Harper walked up beside Danny and helped him lift a particularly heavy crate onto the hover dolly. She was 52 years old, with gray hair tied back in a practical bun and deep lines around her eyes from years of squinting at cargo manifests. She had been working in space for longer than Danny had been alive. "Ignore them," Bates said quietly, nodding toward "They are not worth your anger." "I am not angry," Danny said, "just tired." "I know, but we only have a few more hours of loading and then we can get out of here. Captain says our next stop is Harmony Station. Lots of humans there. It will be nice to be around our own kind for a while." Danny nodded and pushed the hover dolly toward the ship. They watched him go, still laughing and making jokes about soft little Terrans. The galaxy was not kind to humans. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for about 50 years. First contact had happened when Danny's grandfather was a young man, and the transition from isolated Earth species to galactic citizens had been difficult. Humans were smaller than most other intelligent species. They were physically weaker. They did not have natural weapons like claws or fangs or poison. Their skin was soft and easy to cut. Their bones broke under pressure that other species could ignore. On paper, humans should not have survived. They should have been conquered or enslaved or simply hunted to extinction. But something strange had happened instead. Humans had proven to be useful. They were clever. They could adapt to almost any environment. They worked hard and learned fast. Most importantly, they were willing to take jobs that other species considered beneath them. So humans became the workers of the galaxy. They loaded cargo and cleaned stations and served food and fixed machines. They were everywhere, doing the jobs that nobody else wanted to do, and everywhere they went, they faced the same treatment. Mockery, contempt. the assumption that they were lesser beings who existed only to serve their betters. Danny had grown used to it, but that did not mean he liked it. He finished loading his section of the cargo and checked the manifest on his handheld tablet. Everything was accounted for. He sent a confirmation to the ship's computer and started walking back toward the main cargo bay for another load. That was when everything changed. The cargo bay went quiet. It happened so suddenly that Danny stopped walking and looked around, confused. A moment ago, the place had been filled with noise and activity. Now everyone had stopped moving. Everyone had stopped talking. Even the machines seemed to have gone silent. Danny followed the gazes of the aliens around him and felt his stomach drop. Walking through the main entrance of the cargo bay was a creature that Danny had only seen in pictures. It was tall, nearly 9 feet, and covered in fur that was black as space with silver markings that seemed to glow faintly in the light. Its body was lean and powerful, built for speed and killing. Its hands had 6 fingers each, and every finger ended in a curved claw that looked sharp enough to cut through metal. Its face was somewhere between a wolf and a great cat, with a long snout filled with teeth and eyes that burned like molten gold. Danny had learned about these in school, back when he was a child on Earth dreaming of the stars. They were called the ultimate predators of the galaxy. They did not belong to the conquered of species that governed most of galactic civilization. They did not make treaties or alliances. They did not trade or negotiate. They simply existed, wandering the stars alone, hunting whatever caught their interest. Meeting was rare. They avoided crowds and civilization. When they did appear, other species got out of their way, fast. This particular was not just any member of its species. Danny could see the silver bands wrapped around its arms and the ceremonial markings on its chest. He had read about those markings. They meant something important. They meant that this was not just a hunter. This was the Unbroken, the Supreme Hunter, the oldest and most respected still alive. According to the stories Danny had read, was over 300 years old. He had hunted creatures on 1,000 worlds. He had killed things that had no names because anyone who saw them did not live long enough to name them. He was a legend, a myth, a monster that parents told their children about to make them behave. And now he was walking through the cargo bay of Prime, his golden eyes sweeping across the frozen aliens like a predator, examining a herd of prey animals. The merchants who had been laughing at Danny moments ago were pressed against the wall, their scales pale and their yellow eyes wide with terror. The one with the scar was shaking so hard that his plates rattled together. All of his bravery and mockery had disappeared. He looked like a child facing a nightmare. Walked slowly through the cargo bay. His movements were smooth and graceful, like water flowing over stones. Every step was deliberate. Every motion was controlled. He was in no hurry. He had nothing to fear from anyone in this place. The Supreme Hunter paused near a group of traders. They were even bigger than standing 8 feet tall with 4 muscular arms and thick gray skin. They were known as fierce warriors who feared nothing. Right now they were cowering. Leaned toward them and inhaled deeply, sampling their scent. They pressed together, their 4 arms wrapped around themselves, their eyes fixed on the floor. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They barely seemed to breathe. After a long moment, made a sound that might have been dismissal and moved on. He stopped next near a merchant. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and retractable claws that could slice through hull plating. They were fast and deadly when they wanted to be. But this was trembling so violently that Danny could hear his claws scraping grooves into the metal deck. Studied them for a moment, then snorted and kept walking. Danny realized he should move. He should find somewhere to hide, or at least get out of the Supreme Hunter's path. Every instinct in his body was screaming at him to run, to flee, to make himself as small and invisible as possible. But his feet would not move. His body was frozen in place, not from fear but from something else, something he could not explain. His golden eyes swept across the cargo bay and landed on Danny. The Supreme Hunter went still. For a long moment, nothing happened. Danny stood beside his hoverdolly, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat, stared at him with those burning golden eyes, and Danny stared back. He knew he should look away. Every survival instinct he had was telling him to drop his gaze, to show submission, to make it clear that he was not a threat. That was what prey animals did when they encountered predators. They made themselves small. They showed that they were not worth the effort of killing. But Danny could not look away. Something deep inside him refused to break eye contact. Some stubborn part of his human soul that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars would not let him cower before this creature, no matter how terrifying it was. Began walking toward him. "Oh no," Bait whispered from somewhere nearby. Danny had forgotten she was there. "Danny, run, please run." But Danny did not run. He stood his ground as the Supreme Hunter approached, each step bringing the massive predator closer. He could smell now, a wild scent like forests and blood and ancient stone. He could see the individual hairs of this black and silver fur, the fine lines of old scars beneath the coat, the way the muscles moved under the skin. Stopped directly in front of Danny. The Supreme Hunter was so tall that Danny had to crane his neck back to keep meeting those golden eyes. Up close, there was even more terrifying than he had been from a distance. His teeth were long and sharp, designed for tearing flesh. His claws gleamed in the station lights. His very presence seemed to make the air heavier, like gravity had increased just around him. The Supreme Hunter leaned down, bringing his face within inches of Danny's own. His nostrils flared as he drew in the human scent, sampling it, analyzing it. His golden eyes narrowed, and a low rumble emerged from his chest that Danny could feel vibrating through his bones. "You are afraid," said. His voice was deep and rough, like boulders grinding together during an earthquake. The translator chip in Danny's ear converted the language into English, but it could not remove the raw power from those words. Danny swallowed hard. His throat was dry. His hands were shaking. His legs felt like they might give out at any moment. "Yes," he admitted. There was no point in lying, could obviously smell his fear. "Your body is flooded with the chemicals of terror," continued. "Your heart races. Your blood pressure spikes. Your muscles prepare for flight. Every part of your physical form is telling you to run." "Yes," Danny said again. "And yet you do not run. You do not cower. You do not avert your gaze." The Supreme Hunter's head tilted slightly, studying Danny from a new angle. "Why?" Danny thought about the question. It was a good question. He should be running. Any sane creature would be running. Even the with their scales and claws had pressed themselves against the wall in terror. Even the mighty had cowered. Why was Danny, the smallest and weakest person in this cargo bay, the only one still standing his ground? "Because it would not help," Danny said finally. His voice was steadier than he expected. "You are faster than me, stronger than me. If you want to kill me, there is nothing I can do to stop you. Running would just mean I die tired and afraid. So I figured I might as well face whatever happens standing up." Stared at him for a long moment. The cargo bay was so silent that Danny could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. Then the Supreme Hunter did something unexpected. He laughed. The sound was harsh and barking, completely alien, like nothing Danny had ever heard before. But it was unmistakably laughter. Straightened up and looked around at all the aliens frozen in terror around the cargo bay. "Do you see this?" the Supreme Hunter announced. His voice carried easily through the silent space. "Do you see this small, soft, clawless creature standing before me?" No one answered. No one moved. Pointed at Danny with one clawed finger. "This human stands before the unbroken and does not flee. He looks death in the face and chooses dignity over survival. He knows he cannot win, knows he cannot escape, and still he refuses to break." The Supreme Hunter turned in a slow circle, his golden eyes sweeping across the cowering aliens. "And where are the rest of you? You with your scales and your claws and your venom?" His voice dripped with contempt. "You who mocked this human for his weakness. You who laughed at his soft skin and flat teeth." His gaze fixed on the merchant who had been making fun of Danny earlier, whimpered and tried to press himself even further into the wall. "You said, pointing at the, I heard your words, claiming humans evolved from prey animals, saying your children could kill 10 of them." The Supreme Hunter's lips pulled back from his teeth in what might have been a smile. "And yet here you are, shaking like a newborn, pissing yourself in fear, while the prey animal stands tall." Did not respond. He could not respond. His terror had stolen his voice. Turned back to Danny, and his expression shifted. The contempt faded, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "Tell me your name, small one." "Danny Cole." "Danny Cole," the Supreme Hunter repeated, testing the human syllables. "I have walked among the stars for 300 years. I have hunted on worlds that no longer exist. I have killed creatures that would drive these cowards to madness just by looking at them. In all that time, I have met very few beings who could stand before me without breaking." He leaned down again, bringing his face close to Danny's. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, Danny Cole?" Danny shook his head slightly. "No. I see a predator." That surprised Danny so much that he almost laughed. "A predator? I am 5 feet 6 inches tall. I weigh 140 pounds. I have no claws, no fangs, no armor. How am I a predator?" Tapped one massive clawed finger against Danny's chest, directly over his heart. "Not here," the Supreme Hunter said, gesturing at Danny's body. "Your flesh is weak. Your bones are fragile. If I wished, I could tear you apart with one hand." He tapped Danny's chest again. "But here, in your spirit, in your soul, here you are dangerous. Here you are strong." The Supreme Hunter straightened up and raised his voice again so everyone in the cargo bay could hear. "I, the unbroken, Supreme Hunter of the, declare this human as kin." A gasp rippled through the assembled aliens. Danny heard Bait make a strangled sound somewhere behind him. Even the translator chip seemed to hesitate, as if it was not sure it had converted the words correctly. "Kin," Danny repeated, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means you are under my protection," said. "Any who harm you answer to me. Any who insult you speak against my judgment. In the eyes of the, you are no longer a stranger. You are family." Danny's legs finally gave out. He sat down hard on one of his cargo crates, staring up at the massive predator with complete shock. This could not be happening. This had to be some kind of dream or mistake. "I do not understand," he said. "Why would you do this? You do not know me, we just met." Crouched down so that they were closer to eye level. The movement was surprisingly graceful for such a large creature, and there was something almost gentle in the way he settled his weight. "Because the galaxy needs to learn what my people have always known," the Supreme Hunter said. His voice was quieter now, meant just for Danny. "True strength is not in the body. It is not in claws or fangs or armor. True strength lives in the spirit, the will that refuses to surrender, the courage that faces death without flinching." He reached out and placed one massive hand on Danny's shoulder. The claws were retracted, and the touch was surprisingly gentle. "Your species is young," continued. "Humans have only been among the stars for a few decades. You are small and soft and strange. The other races look at you and see prey. They mock you. They underestimate you." The Supreme Hunter's golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. "But I have studied your people, Danny Cole. I have learned your history. I know what humans have survived. Ice ages that covered your world in frozen death. Plagues that killed millions of your kind. Wars that burned your cities and poisoned your lands. Disasters that should have ended you a dozen times over." Leaned closer. "And yet here you are, reaching for the stars with those fragile little hands, building ships and stations and colonies. spreading across the galaxy despite everything that tried to stop you, despite everything that still tries to stop you. He pulled back and stood up, his full height impressive and terrifying. That is the spirit of a predator, not in the claws, not in the teeth, in the soul that refuses to die, in the heart that refuses to give up. The Supreme Hunter looked around the cargo bay once more. The other aliens had not moved. They stood frozen, their world views crumbling around them. "They have always respected strength," announced. "We have always honored courage, and today in this cargo bay I have seen more courage in this small human than in all of you combined." He pointed at the and all the others. "Spread the word. Tell every station, every ship, every world you visit. They have found worthy kin among the humans. Danny Cole is under my protection, and if I hear that any of you have forgotten this, I will come find you personally." Nobody doubted that he meant it. Turned back to Danny and extended one massive hand. After a moment of hesitation, Danny reached out and took it. The Supreme Hunter's grip was firm but careful, aware of the difference in their strength. "Walk with me, Danny Cole. We have much to discuss." Danny looked back at Bate, who was staring at him with her mouth hanging open. She gave him a tiny nod, and Danny turned back to the Supreme Hunter. "Okay," he said. They walked out of the cargo bay together, the massive predator and the small human, leaving behind a room full of shocked aliens who would never look at humanity the same way again. The corridors of Prime were crowded, but the crowds parted before like water before a ship. Aliens of every species pressed themselves against the walls, their eyes wide, their bodies tense. None of them dared to meet the Supreme Hunter's gaze. Danny walked beside him, feeling strange and out of place. He was used to being ignored or mocked. Being feared was new, even if the fear was not really about him. "You are wondering why I chose you," said without looking down. "Yes," Danny admitted. "There must be many humans who would have done what I did. I am nothing special." "You are wrong," the Supreme Hunter said. "I have walked through many stations and ports in my long life. I have observed many humans. Most of them react the same way as the other weak species. They cower. They flee. They try to make themselves invisible." Led them to a quiet observation deck overlooking the stars. Through the massive windows, Danny could see the endless darkness of space, dotted with distant lights. "But you did not," the Supreme Hunter continued, turning to face Danny. "And it was not stupidity or ignorance. You knew exactly what I am. You knew exactly what I could do to you, and still you stood your ground. I told you why. Running would not have helped." "Yes, that is what you told yourself. That is the logical reason you gave." His golden eyes seemed to pierce right through Danny. "But there was another reason, a deeper one. You simply refused to let yourself be prey. Something in you would not allow it." Danny thought about that. Was it true? Was there some part of him that had made a choice in that moment, a choice that had nothing to do with logic or survival? "Maybe," he said slowly. "I have spent 3 years having aliens look down on me, mock me, treat me like I am worthless because I am small and human. Maybe I am just tired of it." Nodded. "Good. That anger is useful. That refusal to accept the role others assign to you. That is the fire of a predator." The Supreme Hunter moved to stand beside Danny at the window, both of them looking out at the stars. "Do you know the history of my people, Danny Cole?" "Only what I learned in school. They are the apex predators of the galaxy. You do not join alliances or make treaties. You wander alone, hunting whatever you choose." "That is what we are now," said. "That is not what we always were." Danny looked up at the massive alien, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Long ago, before your kind had even discovered fire, they were different. We lived in great communities on our home world. We built cities and developed technology. We loved and laughed and raised families." The Supreme Hunter's voice grew distant, lost in ancient memories. "We were not so different from your people." "What happened?" We encountered another species, a race of predators even more dangerous than ourselves. They saw us as a threat to their dominance and decided to eliminate us. Claws extended slightly, an unconscious reaction. They hunted us. They destroyed our cities and burned our forests. They killed millions of our people. Danny stared at him, shocked. He had never heard any of this. In school, they had been described as eternal predators, as if they had always been this way. We survived, continued, but we were changed. The gentle parts of us died with our civilization. The love, the community, the connection to others, all of it burned away until only the hunter remained. The supreme hunter turned to look at Danny. Now we wander alone. We trust no one. We connect with nothing. We are strong, yes. We are feared throughout the galaxy, but we are also empty, hollow. The prey we hunt no longer satisfies us. The victories we achieve mean nothing. His golden eyes held something that Danny had not expected to see: sadness. We are dying, Danny Cole, not from disease or violence, from loneliness, from the weight of our own emptiness. There are fewer born each generation, fewer who care enough to mate or raise young. In a few more centuries, we will be gone completely. Danny did not know what to say. He had never imagined that the terrifying apex predators of the galaxy could be so sad. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked finally. "Because of what I see in humans," said. "You are small and weak. You should not have survived contact with the galaxy. The other species should have crushed you." "They still might," Danny said quietly. "No, they will not, because you have something we lost long ago. You have the ability to be weak and strong at the same time, to be vulnerable and still survive, to love and connect and hope even when the universe gives you every reason to give up." The Supreme Hunter placed his hand on Danny's shoulder again. "I declared you as kin not just to protect you. I did it because I want my people to see what strength really looks like. Not the cold, empty strength of the hunter who has lost everything, but the warm, living strength of the creature who refuses to be broken." Danny felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. He was not sure why. Maybe it was the weight of what was telling him. Maybe it was the realization that this terrifying predator was asking him for help in a way. "I do not know if I can do what you are hopping," Danny said honestly. "I am just a cargo handler. I am nobody important." "You are exactly who you need to be," said. "And you do not need to do anything special. Simply continue being what you are, a human, small and soft and stubborn, brave without knowing why, strong in ways that have nothing to do with muscle or claw." The Supreme Hunter stepped back. "I will leave you now. I have wandered too long in one place and my instincts demand movement, but I meant what I said. You are kin. If you ever need me, call my name into the void. I will hear you." Danny blinked. How is that possible? Something that might have been a smile crossed his alien features. Some things are better left as mysteries. It makes the universe more interesting. The Supreme Hunter turned and began walking toward the corridor that led out of the observation deck. Danny called after him. They paused and looked back. "Thank you," Danny said, "for everything, even if I do not completely understand it." Nodded slowly. "Thank you, Danny Cole, for reminding an old hunter that there is still beauty in this universe, that there is still hope." Then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor with a silence that seemed impossible for such a large creature. Danny stood alone on the observation deck for a long time, staring out at the stars and trying to process everything that had happened. His life had changed completely in the span of an hour. He had gone from being a mocked cargo handler to being the kin of the most feared predator in the galaxy. Eventually, he made his way back to the cargo bay. The loading was almost complete, and the starward drift was nearly ready to depart. Bait was waiting for him near the ship's entrance, her face filled with questions. "What happened?" she demanded as soon as he was close enough. "What did he say to you? Are you okay?" I am fine, Danny said. Better than fine, actually, I think. I think I just made a friend. Bates stared at him like he had grown a second head. A friend, the supreme hunter of the most terrifying creature in known space. That is your friend. I know it sounds crazy. It does not sound crazy. It sounds insane. But Bate was smiling despite her words. Only you, Danny. Only you could walk out of a cargo bay with the deadliest predator in the galaxy and call him a friend. She pulled him into a tight hug, which surprised him. Bate was not usually the hugging type. I was so scared, she whispered. When he started walking toward you, I thought I was going to watch you die. I have never been so afraid in my life. I was afraid too, Danny admitted. But I could not let myself run. I do not know why. Something in me just would not allow it. Bate pulled back and looked at him with new eyes. Maybe that is why he chose you, because you are too stubborn to know when to quit. Danny laughed. Maybe. He said it was because I have the heart of a predator. You, a predator? Bate raised an eyebrow. No offense, Danny, but you are about as scary as a kitten. That is what I told him. But he said true strength is not about the body. It is about the spirit, the will that refuses to give up. Bate considered that for a moment. Huh, that is actually pretty wise coming from a giant murder beast. They walked together toward the ship, leaving behind the cargo bay that had witnessed something unprecedented. Word was already spreading through the station. Danny could see aliens whispering to each other, pointing at him, their expressions a mixture of fear and awe. The mocking had stopped. Nobody laughed at the small Terran anymore. Captain Cross was waiting for them at the airlock. She was a stern woman in her 60s, with silver hair cropped short and eyes that had seen too much of the galaxy's darkness. But right now, those eyes were wide with shock. Cole, she said, get on this ship and tell me everything. I have received 17 messages in the last hour asking if I really have the kin of the Unbroken working on my crew. Danny sighed. It is a long story. We have a long flight to Harmony Station. Start talking. The crew gathered in the common room as the starward drift pulled away from Prime. Danny told them everything, from the moment walked into the cargo bay to the final conversation on the observation deck. When he finished, the room was silent. Wow, said Jenny Park, the ship's mechanic. She was a small woman with grease-stained hands and a quick smile that had temporarily disappeared. Just, wow. I have been flying for 40 years, Captain Cross said slowly. I have met dignitaries and criminals and everything in between, but I have never heard of anyone being declared kin by a. I did not even know that was something they could do. Maybe it is not, Danny said. Maybe he made it up just for this situation. Does it matter? Bate asked. The point is that everyone believes it. You saw how the other aliens reacted. They were terrified. That is going to have consequences, the captain said. Good and bad. Good because nobody will mess with you or this ship anymore. Bad because some people might see you as a threat, or a target. A target for what? Jenny asked. Politics, power games. There are governments and corporations out there that would love to have a connection to the, and now there is a human cargo handler who has that connection. Captain Cross fixed Danny with a serious look. You need to be careful, Cole. Your life just got a lot more complicated. Danny nodded slowly. He had not thought about that. He had been so focused on the personal nature of his encounter with that he had not considered the wider implications. What should I do? He asked. For now, nothing. Just keep doing your job and let things settle down. Word will spread, stories will be told, and eventually some kind of new normal will emerge. The captain stood up. But if anyone comes asking questions or making offers, you come to me immediately. Understood? Understood. The meeting broke up, and the crew returned to their stations. Danny went to his small cabin and lay down on his bunk, staring at the metal ceiling and trying to process the day's events. His tablet beeped with an incoming message. He picked it up and saw that it was a news alert. The headline made him sit up straight. Small human cargo handler declared kin by legendary Supreme Hunter Galaxy reacts. The story had already gone viral. News networks across dozens of systems were reporting on the event. There were interviews with witnesses from the cargo bay, including a terrified-looking who could barely speak. There were experts analyzing what this might mean for human relations. There were politicians making statements and corporations issuing press releases. Danny Cole had become famous in a matter of hours. He set down the tablet and rubbed his eyes. This was not what he had wanted. He had come to space looking for adventure, not celebrity. He just wanted to work and explore and maybe see some amazing things along the way. But the galaxy had other plans for him now. His tablet beeped again. Another message. This one was different. Danny Cole, I have watched the news reports with great interest. I believe we have much to discuss. Come to the Crimson Tower on Nexus Station at your earliest convenience. I will make it worth your while. Admiral Helena Vance, Terran Defense Coalition. Danny stared at the message for a long time. The Terran Defense Coalition was the military organization that protected human colonies and ships throughout the galaxy. Admiral Vance was one of its highest-ranking officers, a legend in her own right. And she wanted to meet with him. The captain was right. His life had gotten very complicated. Danny set down the tablet and closed his eyes. He needed to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new complications. But for now, in the quiet of his small cabin, he allowed himself to feel something he had not felt in a long time. Pride. He had stood before the most terrifying creature in the galaxy and had not broken. He had earned the respect of a predator who respected no one. He had proven, at least to himself, that humans were not just the servants and workers of the galaxy. They were something more. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth all the complications that were coming. The starward drift flew on through the darkness between stars, carrying its small crew toward an uncertain future. Behind them, the news of Danny Cole and the Unbroken spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Ahead of them lay adventures and dangers they could not yet imagine. But for now, Danny Cole slept. And he dreamed of golden eyes and the strange, sad wisdom of a predator who had lost everything except hope. The next morning came too early. Danny woke to the sound of his alarm and the lingering fragments of dreams he could not quite remember. He lay in his bunk for a few minutes, hoping that yesterday had been a dream too. His tablet showed 47 new messages. That answered that question. He got up, showered, dressed, and headed to the ship's small galley for breakfast. Bait was already there, nursing a cup of coffee and staring at a news screen mounted on the wall. "You are famous," she said without looking at him. "I noticed. The story is on every news network. Human news, alien news, even some stations that normally never cover human affairs." She finally turned to face him. "How are you handling it?" Danny poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. "I do not know yet. It has not really sunk in." "That is probably for the best. Give yourself time to adjust before you start panicking." "Thanks, that is very comforting." Bates smiled slightly. "I am here to help." They ate breakfast in relative silence, watching the news coverage scroll by on the screen. Most of it was speculation and analysis, people trying to figure out what the encounter meant and what would happen next. A few stories focused on Danny himself, digging up information about his background and his career. "Look at that," Bates said, pointing at the screen. "They found your school records." Danny Cole was described by teachers as a quiet but determined student who never gave up on a challenge. Danny groaned. "That makes me sound like some kind of inspirational poster." "You kind of are now, whether you like it or not." Captain Cross appeared in the doorway of the galley. "Cole, my office, now." Danny exchanged a glance with Bate, and followed the captain through the narrow corridors of the ship to her small office near the bridge. She closed the door behind them and gestured for him to sit. "I received more messages this morning," she said, settling into her own chair. "A lot more. Government officials, corporate executives, military leaders. Everyone wants to talk to you." "I do not want to talk to anyone." "I know, but you might not have a choice. Some of these people are very powerful, and they do not take no for an answer easily." The captain leaned back. "I also received a message from someone who claims to speak for the—" Danny straightened in his seat. "What did it say?" "Just confirmation of what told you. You are officially recognized as kin by the people. You have certain rights and protections under their customs." She paused. "It also said that left you a gift." "A gift?" "It will be delivered to Harmony Station, where we are headed." The message did not say what it is. Danny had no idea what kind of gift a supreme hunter would give. He was not sure he wanted to find out. "What do you think I should do?" he asked. "Honestly, I think you should take some time to figure out what you want. Do you want to use this new status to advance your career? Do you want to disappear and hope people forget about you? Do you want to become some kind of ambassador between humans and—" "I just wanted to be a cargo handler," Danny said quietly. "I know, but life rarely gives us what we want. It gives us what we need instead, even if we do not recognize it at the time." The captain's expression softened slightly. "You have a chance to do something meaningful here, Danny. Something that could help a lot of people, but only if you choose to take it." Danny thought about words on the observation deck, about the dying people and their need for connection, about humans being small and weak but somehow still surviving. Maybe the Supreme Hunter had seen something in Danny that Danny could not see in himself. Maybe there was a reason this had happened, beyond random chance. Or maybe it was just the universe being strange, as it often was. "I will think about it," Danny said finally. "That is all I am asking." The captain stood up. "We will reach Harmony Station in 2 days. Take that time to decide what you want to do. Whatever you choose, this crew will support you." Danny left the captain's office and wandered through the ship, eventually ending up in the cargo bay where they stored the freight they were hauling. He sat down on a crate, surrounded by boxes and containers from a dozen different worlds. This was his life. Simple, honest work. Loading and unloading cargo, flying from station to station, seeing new places and meeting new people. It was not glamorous, but it was real. It was his. And now it was changing, whether he wanted it to or not. He thought about the merchant, laughing at him in the cargo bay. He thought about all the other aliens who had mocked him over the years, treating him like he was worthless because of his size and species. He thought about standing before him, golden eyes burning with something that might have been hope. Maybe the Supreme Hunter was right. Maybe true strength was not about claws or scales or venom. Maybe it was about something deeper, something that could not be measured or weighed or counted. Maybe being human was enough. Danny sat in the cargo bay for a long time, watching the stars drift by through a small porthole, thinking about the future and all its uncertain possibilities. 2 days later, the starward drift arrived at Harmony Station. Harmony was one of the largest human majority stations in the galaxy, home to nearly 1 million people. It orbited a yellow sun in a system that reminded many colonists of Earth's own solar system. The station itself was massive, a sprawling collection of modules and domes and docking bays that had grown organically over decades of expansion. As the ship approached the station, Danny could see dozens of other vessels clustered around the docking areas. Some were small freighters like the starward drift. Others were massive cargo haulers or sleek passenger liners. A few were military ships, their angular hulls bristling with weapons. "Busy place," Bate observed from her seat on the bridge. "Always is," Captain Cross replied. "Harmony is a major trade hub for this sector. Ships from all over the quadrant pass through here." Danny watched the station grow larger feeling a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Somewhere on that station, a gift from the Unbroken was waiting for him. He had no idea what it might be. The docking procedure took about an hour. The starward drift was assigned a berth in one of the commercial sections, and the crew began preparing for their stay. They would be here for several days, unloading their current cargo and picking up new freight for their next destination. Danny was finishing his pre-departure checks when a message came through the ship's communication system. Danny Cole, please report to Docking Bay 7. You have a delivery waiting. Bate raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Efficiency, I guess. Danny made his way through the station's corridors, following the signs toward Docking Bay 7. The hallways were crowded with humans of all types, workers in coveralls, in suits, families with children, tourists with cameras. It felt strange to be surrounded by his own species after spending so much time on alien-dominated stations. He noticed people looking at him. Some whispered to each other. A few pointed. His face had been all over the news for days now. He was recognizable. Docking Bay 7 was in a more exclusive section of the station, reserved for private ships and special deliveries. A security guard stopped Danny at the entrance. Name: Danny Cole. The guard's eyes widened slightly. Right, you are expected, go ahead. The bay was nearly empty except for a single ship. It was unlike anything Danny had ever seen. Sleek and black, with lines that seemed to flow like liquid, it looked more like a living creature than a machine. Silver patterns traced across its hull, and Danny realized with a start that they matched the markings on its fur. A ship. Standing beside the ship was a creature that was definitely not. It was about Danny's height, covered in soft brown fur, with large ears and a face that reminded Danny of Earth's foxes. It wore simple clothing and carried a data pad. Danny Cole, the creature asked. That is me. I am Pip. I have been assigned as the caretaker and guide for this vessel until you are ready to take full command. The creature's voice was surprisingly pleasant, almost musical. The Supreme Hunter asked me to deliver this gift to you personally. Danny stared at the ship. He gave me a ship. Not just any ship. This is a Shadow Wing, one of only 7 in existence. It was personal vessel for nearly 2 centuries. He has decided that you should have it. Danny could not speak. He could barely breathe. A Shadow Wing was worth more than some planetary economies. It was a legend among spacecraft, capable of things that no other ship could do. And had given it to him, a cargo handler from Earth. I cannot accept this, Danny finally managed. It is too much. Pip tilted his head in a gesture that might have been confusion. The Supreme Hunter anticipated you might say that. He asked me to give you this message. The creature pressed a button on his data pad, and its voice emerged from the speaker. It was deep and rough, just as Danny remembered. Danny Cole, I know you will try to refuse this gift. That is part of why you deserve it, but I ask you to accept it not for yourself but for what you might accomplish with it. The galaxy needs to see humans as more than servants and laborers. You can show them what your people truly are. Use the ship, explore, discover. Prove that courage lives in the smallest hearts. The message ended. Danny stood in the docking bay, looking at the impossible gift that had been placed in his hands. He thought about his small cabin on the starward drift, about the years he had spent loading cargo and ignoring insults. He thought about golden eyes and a voice like grinding stones. He thought about the heart of a predator. Okay, Danny said quietly. Okay. He looked at Pip. Can you teach me how to fly this thing? The fox-like creature's face split into a wide smile. I thought you would never ask. Come aboard and let me show you what a Shadow Wing can do. Danny followed Pip up the ramp and into the ship that would change his life forever. Behind him, through the docking bay windows, the stars waited. Millions of worlds, billions of possibilities, adventures beyond imagination. And somewhere out there, a lonely predator watched the news feeds and allowed himself to hope. The small Terran had accepted the gift. The hunt was about to begin.